Welcome in to Outkick the Show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis, back from the beach, here for a few days before I go to another beach. I hope all of you are having a fantastic week. This is called Outkick the Show. Kareem Hunt signed by the Browns. What do we think about it? I'll tell you what I think. You can weigh in the comments and tell me what you think. Kyler Murray officially headed to the NFL. The AAF trounced the NBA head-to-head. What does that mean for spring football? What does it mean for the NBA? We will discuss. Stephen A., one of the great talent scouts of our time, broke down Dwayne Haskins and said he's more of a running quarterback. What does that tell us? How does that happen? We will discuss as well. I will close out the show talking about my friend David Williams, former athletic director at Vanderbilt, lion in the growth of the Southeastern Conference, incredibly important employee. He died on Friday, and if you don't know who he is, I'm going to tell you why he mattered such a great deal to me, but also to many other people associated with Vanderbilt University and the Southeastern Conference. All that and more still to come, but we begin with Kareem Hunt being signed by the Browns. Now, outrage Twitter is climbing up on their soapboxes right now. They are furious, and I certainly understand why people out there can be upset at the concept of Kareem Hunt getting a second chance and being signed this quickly by the Cleveland Browns. I personally have no problem with the Cleveland Browns making this decision, and I will run through why I believe that to be the case. Let's begin here. Kareem Hunt has already been humiliated for the video that TMZ Sports posted of him shoving and then kicking a woman in the video that went viral that led to the Kansas City Chiefs releasing him. Certainly his behavior was inappropriate, but let's run through this several different things that I think are significant here. First of all, it wasn't domestic violence. This is not domestic violence. This is an assault or a battery. Domestic violence requires some form of interpersonal relationship, which is why it is classified as such. Now, I understand it's easy to just put everything that involves violence against women into one large template, but that's not really at stake here. What we have is basically a violent act that could have been perpetrated in public upon a man or a woman. The woman happened to be the victim in this case. When you looked at it, as the Cleveland police did, and the district attorney and everybody else, they determined there was not sufficient action there to file charges. So I always come here to start with, because I think Roger Goodell and the NFL have done a disservice to their league and to the players by making themselves the investigative body that is determined upon delivering some form of justice for entirely off-the-field related actions, okay? If you are angry at anyone here for not putting forth substantial enough punishment upon Kareem Hunt, I believe that you should be angry at the city of Cleveland, at the district attorney's office in Cleveland, as well as the police investigators who were involved in this case. They are a criminal investigative body, and they made the decision not to press charges here. You may disagree with that. If you disagree with that, and that is certainly your right, you should direct your ire and your angst not at the Kansas City Chiefs, not at the NFL, and not at the Cleveland Browns. You should be angry at the judicial system and the investigative body of a criminal nature associated with Cleveland, Ohio. Okay? So let's start there. I think that Roger Goodell's decision to implement the personal conduct policy had the very deleterious impact of immediately connecting every wrong act that is done or alleged to be done by an NFL player directly to the NFL. I think in retrospect, if he were remotely intelligent on this issue, Roger Goodell would have never decided that the NFL needed to get into the criminal investigative business, or that the NFL should be in the business of punishing players for entirely off-the-field related incidents. I have been saying this for a decade. Slowly, people are starting to recognize that my argument is actually the correct one, and everybody who has followed Roger Goodell off this cliff is filled with idiocy, because the result has not been to make the NFL brand stronger. It has been to drag the NFL brand into the mud and directly connect the league to criminal behavior by players or alleged criminal behavior, such that now whenever a criminal behavior occurs by an NFL player, almost immediately everybody says, what's the NFL going to do about this? That should not be the way this response occurs. Roger Goodell shouldn't have gotten blamed because Ray Rice got virtually no punishment in that video where he punched his then fiance, now wife, in New Jersey, in Atlantic City. It should have been the criminal investigative body charged with prosecuting that case that let Ray Rice off with probation, despite the fact that they had video evidence of him committing domestic assault. Okay, so that is the one statement. Okay, now I think Kareem Hunt's a really talented running back, and just like with Reuben Foster, I think that if you want to decide that a guy deserves a second or even third chance because you believe in his football talent, that should be the decision of the team. If the team's individual fans find it to be particularly problematic, guess what they can do? They cannot re-up their season tickets. They cannot buy gear. They cannot support the sponsors of the team. All of those things are perfectly reasonable responses that individual fans can do. They cannot watch the games, and ultimately let the marketplace decide. Let the marketplace decide whether or not it is a good decision or a bad decision for an individual team to sign a player. My belief is if the player isn't in jail or isn't restricted from being an employee, that you should have the right to be employed in the NFL. Now, some people disagree, but I tend to believe let the marketplace decide, let individual teams decide. If it's a bad decision for their business, they won't sign a guy like Kareem Hunt. If it's a good decision, they will. I think it should be the individual team's decision as opposed to the NFL sitting on high and deciding what's appropriate or not. Some people disagree with me. That's perfectly fine. And if they do, they have the right not to support the team any longer or support the organization or anything else. Let the marketplace decide. If I were an NFL owner, and I said this a couple of months ago, I would sign Kareem Hunt if I needed a running back and I thought he made my team better. Because I think his problems do not exceed his talents. That's the test I always apply here. Do you believe that the talents exceed the problems? If the answer is yes, that's a risk I would take. If I were Jimmy Haslam, if I were the owner of the Browns, I would sign Kareem Hunt and I would put him on my team. I understand if other owners wouldn't. I understand if some of you disagree with that. I put up a poll question, by the way, because I was curious what my audience felt about this. And it was pretty straightforward. Do you believe it's okay for the Browns to sign Kareem Hunt? Very straightforward. Curious to see the results. Are you okay with the Browns signing Kareem Hunt? Nearly 13,000 of you have voted, and 80% of you said yes. So most of you agree with me that it's perfectly okay to sign Kareem Hunt. I'm curious now. Let me know right now in the comments. If you were an NFL owner, would you sign Kareem Hunt? If you needed a running back, if you thought he would make your team better, same thing, Facebook. Yes or no, that's all I want. Would you sign Kareem Hunt or not? You can dive in and let me know what your answer is. I think the majority of you will probably reflect what we have already seen from the poll question, which is most people would make the decision to sign Kareem Hunt. I have no issue with it, and I think certainly if he has any other issues going forward, you just release him. I don't understand why this is confusing for the people who wouldn't sign Kareem Hunt. I don't know what your position is. Do you think he should have to be suspended for longer? We don't know the full suspension yet. Do you think that he should no longer be able to play in the NFL? If it's the latter and you think he no longer should be able to play in the NFL, Tyreek Hill did something worse. He choked and beat his pregnant girlfriend. He's in the NFL on the Chiefs already. Joe Mixon knocked out a girl who did absolutely nothing wrong on video in Oklahoma. He's on the Bengals in the state of Ohio already. If your issue is with Kareem Hunt, my question to you would be, how in the world can you reconcile being okay with Tyreek Hill and Joe Mixon being in the NFL when they have committed violent acts against women that are much more severe than the one that has that Kareem Hunt did on that video? So that is my perspective on that. Kyler Murray made the right decision in going to the NFL. I was early on this, and a lot of people disagreed with me. I said, let's just look at the dollar figures. I think there's a chance Kyler Murray is going to be the first quarterback to go overall. Right now, his draft status on the board is 6.5. Over, under, if you want to bet on where Kyler Murray is going to be drafted. I think it's possible he could go number 1 overall before all is said and done. He is going to make a lot more money, all right? He is going to make infinitely more money than anybody else out there would in Major League Baseball. And I ran through the stats on first-round draft picks in Major League Baseball. Only about half of them play, 46% I think it was, play for longer than 3 years in Major League Baseball who were drafted in the first round. Only a little over half ever reach Major League Baseball. We're talking about the difference potentially in 25 or 30 million guaranteed versus potentially 4 or 5 million guaranteed. This is a no-brainer. I think that Kyler Murray made the right decision. Now, I also think he gave a disastrous interview with Dan Patrick. I would want to redo that. I'd want to come on with me. I'd want to do every media outlet I could in the wake of that performance. But I thought that it was a no-brainer for him to decide to go to the NFL once he thought that he was going to go in the first round. Guess what? If he doesn't go in the first round and get big guaranteed money, he could always go play baseball again. Reports are that he's going to return some of his signing bonus, but to me, this is not a difficult decision at all. Let him go into the NFL. If he's a first-round pick, more power to him. If he's not, he can leave. And guess what? If after 4 years he stinks, he can go into Major League Baseball like Tim Tebow did and be a lot younger at the quarterback at baseball than Tim Tebow is, and it looks like Tim Tebow is going to make Major League Baseball. All right, AAF trounced the NBA, absolutely destroyed the NBA head-to-head, and I love how all the checkmark brigade that always cheerleads because the politics in the NBA is more excited about the NBA than they are the football universe. This is a beatdown of epic degrees, all right? For a brand new league that gets almost no promotion whatsoever, to show up in week 1 on CBS versus ABC, the NBA is the most overhyped, overpromoted, overanalyzed, overdiscussed league in the history of sports, all right? That is because ESPN and Turner drastically overpaid for the NBA rights. They gave so much more money that the NBA is a disaster from a ratings perspective. No one will talk about it because the SJW crowd loves everything about the NBA. But the NBA ratings are awful. The audience is not substantial. They are trending towards what would be a disaster of an NBA Finals. The Golden State Warriors going up against the Toronto Raptors. I hope it happens just because everybody would lose their minds over the fact that the NBA doesn't really have a very substantial audience, and much of it is artificially manufactured on social media. The numbers don't reflect in any way that the NBA is remotely close to football in terms of interest. All right? So they went head-to-head. The NBA's got a great matchup. They got James Harden going up against Russell Westbrook. And this is a big game. Both these guys are on fire. They've been promoting it all week. They even promoted it all day Saturday during the ESPN game. You ever notice how much more promotion the NBA gets during non-NBA games than any other sport? ESPN promotes the NBA like crazy. I can't believe how much. I was watching Duke play against UVA, and almost every single ad that aired during the Duke-UVA game was for the NBA. And by the way, Duke-UVA was the highest rated sporting event of the weekend. More people watched college basketball than anything else, which is pretty wild to think about Duke UVA airing at, 5 o'clock Central, 6 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock Mountain, 3 o'clock Pacific on Saturday was the most watched sporting event of the weekend, which is pretty wild. I thought Duke UVA was a really entertaining game. By the way, Zion Williamson, maybe the biggest freak of nature athletically to ever play college basketball. The block he had, I put it on my Twitter feed if you didn't see it, where he went from underneath the basket to blocking a three-point shot, was flat out phenomenal to see. I think one of the most intriguing aspects of the NBA season, honestly, is who is going to tank enough to be able to get Zion Williamson. Is it going to be Phoenix? Is it going to be the Knicks? Is it going to be the Cavs? Who is going to win the NBA All-Star, the NBA lottery, and be able to draft what looks like a future NBA All-Star, and certainly a guy that gets a lot of attention? But the Bulls also in the mix. Lots of bad teams in the mix. All right? So, what is intriguing to me about this is I don't know the answer on whether there is a big demand for minor league football. But what I would say about that league is this. One, this is a major deal that their first ever game rated as highly as it did. And certainly people out there can say, well, the XFL rated highly 15 or 18 years ago. Certainly you can say that. But that was so long ago that I don't think you can really use its ratings as any kind of prescriptive idea of what the future might be for the AAF. Here is what I would say. I think this is good for college football. I think it's good for the NFL. Let me explain why. I think that if college kids can go pro, it will clean up a lot of the ugliness associated with college football. Guys not doing their work, cheating on academics, guys getting paid that you maybe get upset about while they're in college. I think if a 19 or 20-year-old, instead of having to wait 3 years, can go pro and can sign all of the endorsement deals that he wants to sign, college football will be remaining for people who want to go to college, get a degree, and play football simultaneously. Whereas if the XFL, which is going to recruit younger guys, and also you have out there the AAF, which is also going to recruit some younger guys, this will be a substantial impact in the overall landscape of the way that football is viewed. I also think it cleans up all that you need to have to play college athletes. I think it disappears overnight. Because if you want to make money and play minor league football, you can. And I think it also becomes a really interesting storyline. What if the XFL went to Trevor Lawrence and they said, hey, Trevor, instead of playing a third year with Clemson before you go number 1 overall, we want you to come play for Bob Stoops in the XFL, and we will develop you with Bob Stoops just like he would have if you were in college, and you could break out what the overall impact will be for your career because you can sign multi-million-dollar endorsement deals, boom, as a sophomore, and then you can focus full-time on training to be in the NFL. I think it would be wild. Some people are going to say, well, the salaries aren't very high. You can get exemptions. Most of the money, especially early, is in getting guys signed for Nike or Under Armour or wherever it is. Trevor Lawrence at the age of 19 would be able to sign a huge apparel contract. Why would he not sign that huge apparel contract, walk out on playing college football, bank millions of dollars guaranteed, play in the XFL for a year, and then go into the NFL draft? That's the pitch I would be making to him. Why play college football for free and enrich your university if you believe you are ready to be a pro and you want to focus full-time on becoming a professional? People say, well, he can get hurt. He can get hurt in college, too. Take out a big insurance check. Go ahead and bank millions of dollars. I don't think it's a bad setup. I also think that a lot of people are rooting for this minor league football league to work because I think there are a lot of guys out there that make a lot less than $75,000. While it's entertaining to think about, what the overall impact might be of a guy making millions of dollars a year, most people out there would rather make $75,000 a year doing what they do than they would playing sports than they would making a lot less than that. I don't know how many of you guys out there watching me right now make less than $75,000 a year, but I bet a lot of you is the answer. And I bet a lot of you would play pro football for $75,000 a year to work for a few months a year and find something else to do for the remainder of the year, especially if that allowed you to keep your dream alive of one day being a pro sport athlete in the NFL. So I think this is a potential really good setup for the football fans in general and also for sports fans in general. I'd like to see the AAF, and I would also like to see the XFL do well, because I think it would be a lot of fun to talk about, particularly if we got some good quarterbacks in the league to be able to play. All right, Stephen A. Stephen A. on Friday, and I don't want to let this slide and not comment on it because it happened to happen on Friday. Stephen A. Smith went on his show, First Take, and argued that Dwayne Haskins was more of a running quarterback than he was a passing quarterback. Dwayne Haskins threw for almost 5,000 yards, somewhere around 50 touchdowns. He ran for a little over 100 yards last season. If you watched any game featuring Ohio State this year, if you watched any half of a game featuring Ohio State this year, there is no way on earth you could in any way classify Haskins as a running quarterback. There is no one on the planet who could make that mistake. I don't think that Stephen A. watched an entire or even part of an Ohio State game all year. As a guy who talks for 5 hours live on television and 15 hours live on radio and another couple of hours live on here, either you're listening to me on podcast or you're watching my video on Facebook, YouTube, or Periscope, this is an unbelievable failure. Making millions of dollars a year with a huge staff of people to advise him, I got to tell you, there's no way to defend that kind of error. And I understand the challenges and difficulty inherent in talking about a ton of different subjects. I do it every day for about 6 hours a day on average, plus I write. You have to work your ass off to be able to be informed about a huge variety of different subjects and be able to talk about them intelligently. But I don't think I have ever been as wrong about any opinion definitively as Stephen A. Smith was about his opinion on Dwayne Haskins. And here is the other aspect of this story. If a white guy who talks about football had gone on and said what Stephen A. did, that Dwayne Haskins was primarily an athletic quarterback, that he was more of a runner than a passer, it would have turned into social justice warrior feeding frenzy. Everybody would have gone in on that white guy and said, look how racist he is. How dare he make the argument that Stephen A. is making. And the reason why Stephen A. got a pass is because he's a black guy, even though he was stereotyping Haskins based on the fact that he's a black quarterback as well. Remember how angry the SJW blue checkmark tribe got on Twitter when anybody had the gall to say, you know what, I don't really know if Lamar Jackson's going to translate as a good passer in the NFL. I had that opinion. I still have that opinion. I watched every major game Lamar Jackson had at Louisville. Do you know what Lamar Jackson was? He was a one read and then run guy. Do you know what I saw him doing in the NFL? One read and then run guy. You can't make a living doing that in the NFL. At some point in time, you have to be able to drop back into the pocket and throw the football. And I have seen too many guys, whether it's Tim Tebow, whether it's Vince Young, whether it's RG3, who have been one read and run guys and had early success in the NFL and then were not able to translate that to success at the NFL level. Yet anybody who said that about Lamar Jackson was immediately labeled as racist. Remember when Bill Polian came out and said, hey, you know what, let's try him at a different position. Oh, that's racist. Anybody other than Stephen A. says that, Anybody other than Stephen A says that, and it turns into a major racial issue. Stephen A says it, and he gets a pass. His stupidity is okayed there. All right, here's what I would say about that in general. Sometimes people just get things wrong, but why should you give somebody a pass because of the color of their skin, particularly when they're acting upon an entire stereotype in his opinion? Now, maybe your answer can be, well, Stephen A is such a clownish and cartoonish figure that no one takes him seriously. But Stephen A has been wrong like this a ton. Remember when he broke down the Chargers and the Chiefs game and said Hunter Henry against Derek Johnson was the most important matchup, and Derek Johnson was retired and Hunter Henry was on IR? And now he's out there trying to argue that Dwayne Haskins is more of a running quarterback than he is a passing quarterback? The guy is entertaining, but he doesn't know anything. So as a result, with this huge staff of people they've got working on First Take, that's pretty indefensible to be that wrong. It's pretty amazing, trust me, to be that incompetent. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying I don't get facts wrong occasionally. I'm not saying I don't get things completely out of context all the time, right? But I have never been remotely close to being as bad live on air as Stephen A has been most recently. Finally, I want to finish off this show telling you about somebody who was very helpful to me in my career and was also an incredibly important figure in the SEC at Vanderbilt University and in college athletics in general. And his name is David Williams. And he died on Friday of a heart attack, I believe, unexpectedly while he was out with his family at a restaurant. If you don't know the name David Williams, he has been incredibly important in the growth of the SEC network, the growth of the SEC overall, and the continued excellence at Vanderbilt University. He was one of my law professors at Vanderbilt University Law School. I later was able to talk in his classroom. He was an incredibly important figure that I had a great relationship with. I had him on the radio show a lot over the years. He was always outstanding, and he is going to be missed very much by the SEC fans, also by Vanderbilt University. He was the first black athletic director in the history of the SEC. That, to me, every bit as big, if not bigger, than being the first head coach in football or basketball to be given the run of a major athletic department and to have done as good of a job as he did. He has been a credit to many who will come after him. And if you just think about what he was able to do, Vanderbilt baseball, Tim Corbin leads him to a national championship. He found James Franklin and gave him a shot when nobody else was giving him a shot. He got Vanderbilt into a lot of bowl games when everybody said that nobody was ever going to be able to make a bowl game. And as a result, I think his impact is seismic, never-ending, and will live long after him. He has been incredibly impactful at Vanderbilt, and I will always consider him to have been a friend and mentor. He meant a lot to me. If you have not read about him or read up on him, he did a tremendous amount for the SEC and for Vanderbilt University. I would encourage all of you to think about him and his family this week as they prepare to bury him on Friday. That's David Williams. My name is Clay Travis. This has been Outkick the Show. I appreciate all of you spending your Monday afternoon here. I'll be on television here in just a few minutes. Let me know what you think as we hop on, lock it in 20 minutes. This has been Outkick the Show. My name is Clay Travis, DBAP, unless you need to SBAP. See you guys. Bye. Kisses. Love you. Thank you, Facebook.